So my name is Simone O'Flaherty, and over the past year I've been working with Efficiency Vermont with their home performance team on a program specifically targeting moderate income Vermonters. I chose the program because I'm really interested in energy efficiency as a way to mitigate climate change. So what is Efficiency Vermont? Efficiency Vermont is a really unique model and the first of its kind in the country. It's a contract between the Public Service Board of Vermont and the Vermont Energy Investment Corporation. And their mission is to provide incentives, financial rebates, and technical assistance to individuals and businesses to save energy. So, Vermont. Vermont is one of the 6 New England states. It's New Hampshire's neighbor to the west. And it's a small state with a small population. There's only about 629,000 people in Vermont, which is the same population as Boston. It's a homogeneous state. About 95% of the population is white. And it's an educated state. There's about 91% of the people have a high school diploma or higher. And this is a picture of our state capital, Montpelier. So what is home performance? So in the United States, buildings use 40% of the total energy that we consume. So it's a large piece of the energy puzzle. And so in looking at your home loses heat in all directions. So through your roof, out the windows, out the walls, through your basement, and through doors. So the home performance is really looking at tightening that up so your home is using less energy. So who are moderate income Vermonters? So moderate income is defined as having an income of between 80% and 120% of the area median income. And that is adjusted by family size and by county. So for the majority of counties in Vermont, a family of 4 would be making between $55,000 and $82,000 a year. Moderate income Vermonters represent 35% of all Vermonters, so it's a pretty large chunk of the population. Whoops. And in Vermont, about 71% of the housing is owner-occupied, which means if you combine all those statistics, you get a pretty sizable group of people that are moderate income and homeowners. So the problem. So this is a pretty typical scene in New England in the winter. And you drive around and it kind of looks pretty, but it actually means that that homeowner has a large problem in their house. It means their heat is going straight up through their roof, melting the snow that lands there and creating icicles. And they're paying a lot of money for their energy bills. And for moderate income Vermonters, that could be a disproportionate amount of the money that they're bringing home. So they can also be experiencing an uncomfortable house in terms of having drafts and closing off rooms and things like that. So Efficiency Vermont has an existing program that helps Vermonters with this problem. So they've had some success. So this is the Hanson family. They live in Starksboro, Vermont. They live in a 1992 Cape that they heat with wood. So they had a big problem with drafts and with icicles on their roof. So they called up Efficiency Vermont, and an Energy Star contractor came out and did an energy assessment of their home. He recommended a comprehensive project that included air sealing, basement insulation, and then their attic was cut off from the rest of the house, so they created access to the attic so they could put in additional insulation and do air sealing up there. The project cost almost $12,000, but they've seen huge benefits from this project. The air blower test and the assessment showed that they had a 59% reduction in heat loss through the house, and they're saving $1,300 a year on their energy bills, and they've reported that their house is a lot more comfortable. So you say, great, like, what were you doing with this project? They're done, they don't need to do anything. So when I originally had designed my project, I was looking at this piece. So for moderate income Vermonters, this can be a big hurdle to cross because we're asking you to put a huge amount of money into a project and you have limited resources. You don't qualify for state weatherization programs, so it's all coming out of pocket. And I knew that Efficiency Vermont had just hired a position and they were going to move forward with some financing options. But once I got into the project and I was talking with them, they discovered they felt like they had a larger problem where their program as a whole wasn't attracting moderate income Vermonters. And they weren't sure that financing was the only issue. So they were thinking, could it be interest or a lack of knowledge, or what really is the problem? So they decided to take a really deep dive into getting to know moderate income Vermonters, and that's what I've spent the last year working on. And I just wanted to point out, so the current program model is to get an energy assessment, do a comprehensive project, and then receive an incentive at the end of completing that program. So in the fall, they started with an on-depth study where they invited about 20 Vermonters to participate on an online forum, and they spent about 30 to 40 minutes a day engaging deeply in that. So the outcome of that was really understanding the values, key motivators, and key barriers that moderate income Vermonters identified. And so you can see that there's a lot of consistency between the three categories. Vermonters are concerned about the environment, they're concerned about their consumption, and they have a really self-sufficient pride, and that goes right into their reasons for wanting to engage in energy efficiency. And the key barriers that they identified are similar in that financing is a huge one, time is also one, and then interest was one. So in January, we did a survey, a phone survey with 200 Vermonters. So we called a lot of people, and we were able to get more in-depth information about what we had already learned on the online forum. So the key thing that came out of that survey was that we can now divide moderate income Vermonters into three categories. So you have your adamant avoiders, and those are people who are just not interested at this time in energy efficiency. They don't think they need it, they don't want it. There's the willing investors, and those people are interested in energy efficiency and moving forward with projects. And what we found was those families were at the highest part of the income, and they had, and they were the oldest, so they had the most resources. And then the largest portion were these struggling advocates, and these are people who are interested, but for whatever reason cannot move forward with an energy project. So following this, these two studies, the home performance team came up with a program concept. So the first one was to do an energy assessment combined with 6 hours of targeted air sealing. And then the second option was to do an energy assessment combined with 6 hours of targeted air sealing and direct installation of LED light bulbs, low flow shower heads, other things like that. So they brought this to the contractors because they partner extensively with contractors, and they're the ones who are actually doing the work. And so the feedback that Efficiency Vermont got from the contractors was that they really understood the rationale for the program and they liked the direction we were going in, but they hated the concept. Unfortunately, they said that it would be really difficult because homes are so different. You can't just do 6 hours of air sealing and have the same outcome in each home. It might be difficult to fit in their business model. And they weren't sure that it would encourage people to do more energy improvements, because if they didn't see a gain, they might think, well, there's no point. So it's kind of back to the drawing board. So what we decided to do next was to go out to the homeowners again. And this was the part that I got to lead. So I took the lead on doing 17 in-depth interviews with moderate income Vermonters around Vermont. So you can see from the stars where I did the interviews. So we tried to get a geographic representation of the whole state. And we spent an hour with each of the homeowners, and we talked at length about their homes and improvements. So this was the bulk of the exercise. So we asked people to sort cards into 3 categories. So each of the cards is a home improvement. And we asked them to put it into the category already done, interested, and not interested. And we talked at length about each category, why it was in that category. You know, for the interested pile, how we asked them to rank them, how likely are you to move forward. So at the end, we were able to analyze that data and sort the results into interest categories. So we have high interest, medium interest, and low interest. And you can see installed central AC is the clear loser. Everyone said, we live in Vermont, we don't need that. But you'll see that ceiling air leaks, insulation, and home assessments all made the high interest category, which was actually great because that's what we wanted to see. But in looking at the comments, we came away with these key takeaways. So moderate income Vermonters intend to make energy efficiency improvements, and a lot of them are already moving forward, but they're not working through Efficiency Vermont. EVT's delivery mechanism is not supporting their behavior. So if you remember one of the first slides, we start with an energy assessment, move on to a comprehensive project, and then you work with an Energy Star contractor. So what we found was, while they identified that they were interested in home assessments, they didn't view it as a starting point. So we're asking them to do an energy audit or assessment to prioritize their home improvement needs. And they have a self-identified list that they want to work off of. And then they want the assessment to kind of show that they were right. We're asking them to do a comprehensive project, but they're chunking their projects. And this is really related to finances, where they have limited resources. So they identify a project and they're doing a little bit at a time while they can. We heard, oh, we have, I'm replacing my windows, and my living room is next, that kind of thing. And then they're really interested in doing it themselves. In our sample, we had a lot of people who were contractors or had a lot of contractors who were friends, and I think it's like indicative of just that moderate income category that a lot of the people who do those jobs fall into that category. So they're not interested in working with a contractor because a contractor is more expensive than their buddy Joe. The good news is that the opportunity exists for products that Efficiency Vermont is interested in. So specifically identified air sealing, insulation, and windows and solar. So the next step, so Efficiency Vermont is still working with the data, and they're finalizing some new program options that they're hoping to move forward with. As I mentioned, the opportunity is that the priorities are really aligned between all the stakeholders. So Efficiency Vermont, the contractors and homeowners all want the same thing. The challenges that they're facing is that moderate income Vermonters aren't interested in that assessment as a starting point, which is a really important starting point for Efficiency Vermont because they need to be able to measure savings. So it's something that's kind of non-negotiable if they need to claim savings. And then trying to figure out how to incorporate do-it-yourself options, which again comes back to being able to measure the energy savings that people achieve. So my recommendations for them is to simplify the energy assessment. So it's an easier entry point, it doesn't cost as much, and it doesn't take as much time. To simplify the incentive structure is really dependent on what kind of project you do and how much savings you get. If they could simplify that, they could probably get more people engaged. To expand their contractor network to not just include Energy Star contractors. And then to adjust their communication strategy. People in Chittenden County, where Efficiency Vermont is located, are very familiar with its program and its services. But outside of that area, people are less familiar. And we heard from a couple of homeowners that they felt like Efficiency Vermont was ignoring their region. So learnings and reflections. Flexibility and readjustment. I think I learned that on a personal level in terms of trying to readjust my program as Efficiency Vermont was willing and able to engage with me and adjusting my expectations for my project. But also on their side, they had a program concept they were ready to roll out in March. And then they did those contractor interviews and they said, whoop, we can't do it, so we're going to have to be flexible and go back to the drawing board and readjust. And then stakeholder engagement is really important. They have an existing program that has had some success and some really good success. But if the majority of people aren't using it, it's not going to be as successful as it could be. Another thing that I learned was you really need to pay attention to what your stakeholders are saying. It's easy to revert back to what you think you know. So it's good to go back to that research and be like, well, did they actually say that? Is that what I found out? And just reaffirm that, to just keep going back. That's it. Any questions?